Hey everyone, this is going to be a track walk at Sebring International Raceway. We are in the Porsche 911 RSR. I'm going to play the lap in full in cockpit view, then I'll play it in chase view, and then we'll do some track analysis. Now here's the lap in chase view. Alright, so for your reference, as usual, that was a 155.5. Couple things I want to mention first. This is by no means a perfect lap. I actually think it was fairly sloppy, but I think it's good to show that at this track, just because this track is a little hairy in regards to the pavement. And now this is leading into the second thing I wanted to mention. It is a very, very bumpy track, and because of that, it's definitely harder to be consistent. It also kind of can cause there to be different lines in different places, I feel like. But as we go through the track, I'll explain all the little idiosyncrasies that you're gonna come across. All right, so coming into turn one, the first thing I want you to notice is that you exit on the left side coming out of the last corner of the track, which is called Sunset. And so you want to make sure as you come out of that corner, you immediately start moving diagonally across the track over to the right side, because turn one is a left-hander. One of the most important things in tracking in general is making sure you always set yourself up for the next corner as soon as possible, so you can just concentrate on the corner itself when you get there. Concentrate on your braking marker and everything else. You don't want to be scrambling at the last second to set yourself up properly for the corner that you're coming up on. Now basically what you're going to be doing here is just hugging the wall. As you approach turn one, you're going to see right about here, you can start to see it where the wall kind of kinks in. And as the wall kinks in, that's pretty much going to be when you start your braking. As you can see here, I just give it a little quick dab to shave off some speed, and then I start turning in and trailing it in. This corner is it can be very, very sketchy. It is a very high speed corner that is also very bumpy. I think I was running a little low wing in right here, so it was a little sketchier probably for me. You may want to run some higher wing just to keep the rear a little planted in these high speed corners. But it's definitely something to take note of. So now as we're coming into turn one here, you can see there's this yellow line that I'm coming up on here. You kind of want to turn in towards it and then kind of follow it in here. At this point, you want to come a little bit closer to the wall. I ran a little bit wide here, like I said, just because of the setup that I think that I was using. I was getting I was a little loose, and I was just trying to not have it come around on me. But because I did notice that I was a little wide, it means that my arc going into the corner now is actually less. So I did pick up the throttle a little early. In general, you kind of want to trail it in pretty much to where you see that cone in the fence. So it would be right around here is pretty much when you start picking up the throttle. I got a little early because I went a little wide, and therefore I could, which is actually something that I also think needs to be mentioned, especially at a track like this where it is so bumpy and can cause a lot of inconsistency lap to lap. One thing that I think you learn with experience is whenever you do slightly screw up a corner, there's usually a way to negate the negative effects, your lost time, as much as possible. So like I said, in this case, I got on the throttle a little earlier than I normally would if I actually was, tighter on my entry. Now, the next thing to mention on this corner is that coming out of it, you do not want to open up your steering. I'm going to play this really slow here. As you're coming out of it, it looks like the track opens up a lot, and I'll even catch myself doing it sometimes. You start to think you can open up your steering here, but what you're not going to realize until you get there is the fact that the road actually tightens up again. See? So you want to make sure that you keep a good amount of steering on as you're coming out of this. It's very deceptive because there's so much track on the right side and you don't really see the road coming up, but it stays tight. So you want to make sure you keep all that steering on. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the dirt there, and then there's no controlling it. You're going to be in the wall. So track out as much as you can. Just be careful if you do track out and use that curb that you get back quickly, because otherwise you hit that dirt, it's very easy to lose the car. And then as we come out here, you come a little bit to the middle of the track just to open up this little right-hand kink, because you want to make sure that by the time you're here, you're right up along the right side here for your braking zone. It looks like I reach full brake pressure here right around the 2 cones. Again, that's, you know, wherever you're comfortable braking. I think in general people aim for, you know, between the 3 and the 2. But you want to make sure you get the car slowed down, and right around the first cone is when you're going to start your turn in. This corner is going to be very indicative of a lot of the corners here. You don't want to accidentally early apex. You're going to see it looks like apex might be right around where the last part of the curbing that you can see right now, but as we get closer to it, you're going to see right here the curb sticks out. Let me back up a little bit here. So the curb's like coming around, but then right here the curb sticks out a little bit. It's a little hard to see because my hand's in the way. Let me switch to chase view here. Where is this? Let me actually go to far chase. Pretty much right here, as you can see, the curb sticks out a lot. So if you came in any earlier, let's go back to chase here. So if you came in earlier, you would have been caught off guard, and you've been really clobbering that curb really hard. I took a little bit. In general, honestly, you probably want to like just barely nip it. It kind of does help you rotate a little bit, but like even with the little bit that I hit it, as you can see here, it did make my car bounce around a little bit. So 2 things. One, a lot of you're gonna have another curb coming up here. It's gonna be pretty much the same thing, but you do not want to early apex any of the turns here. It can really catch you off guard with how these curbs are. And then number 2, the curbs here are very bumpy. So hitting them, you know, really, they're high curbs, so they do upset the car a lot. Coming into this turn here, you want to put your car all the way up on the grass here. Let me switch to chase view again, actually. And back up here. So you can come up all the way on the grass here, just as long as you have one tire to the left of the white line. You're not going to get an off track, but it's a good way to shorten up this line, and also help rotate the car a little bit. It depends on the car you use. In the RSR, you're gonna have to lift a little bit, just because of how it takes curbs. GT4 is also pretty bouncy. Most of the Porsches kind of are, but if you guys ever, you know, for example, drive like, you know, the Ferrari GTE or something, you can pretty much go flat out over this, you know. But in this car, you're definitely gonna have to lift a little bit. So now we come out here, and then as you see, we approach this curb here. Right after you pass that curb, is pretty much when you want to get on the brakes again. So as you can see, I pass it, and now I'm getting onto the brakes. You can also use all these tire marks in the in the middle of the road as a good place to aim. And again, this is going to be like that previous turn where you do not want to early apex, because as you come around here, it's going to look like right now where we see that yellow line coming out, that's where we want to apex. Your apex is after that, because again, right there, if you can see it here, the curb sticks out a little bit where the yellow line ends. Let me switch to chase view one more time here. So as you're coming, you just want to make sure that you keep yourself a little wide here, and then right there, see the curb has like a little point to it, and that's your apex. And after that, you want to then hug the curb and then track out. So I'll just play that in cockpit again. Yeah, so the key here is just keep your line wide, just trail the brake in all the way to the apex and then track out. And your apex is that that point right there where it starts to stick out. That's your apex. And then just be careful here. Another thing I want to point out is that if you do apex early there, if you get on the gas too early, you're definitely gonna go out wide over here, and you do not want to hit that dirt. So if you do notice you get on the gas a little early, because you get on the gas and then realize that little point was actually ahead of you, don't go full throttle. You know, you want to be careful, especially around here. The pavement does seem to be a little slippery, so you can very easily use the car. But as long as you get the car pointed right by the time you get on the gas over here, you can then go full throttle out of here. But if you do get on the gas too hard and you're early apexed, you could also just spin right into the inside wall instead of going out wide into the dirt. This is just a nice long curved straight. Stay to the right. Now your next turn is going to be right-hander, so track out to the left here to set yourself up here. Braking zone here is pretty much you're aiming between the 4 and the 3 cones. I reach peak brake pressure right before the 3. This part of the track is very slippery because it's very bumpy under braking. So as you can see, I already got the rears locked up and I'm starting to lock up the front a little bit. I probably could have braked a little bit earlier. Like I said, between the 3 and the 4, it looks like I was aiming for the 3 here. But I wanted to include this in this lap because it was just showing you how slippery it is. So I'm already locking up the fronts right now. And just in case anyone didn't know, the yellow lights are for locking up the rear, and the purple lights are when your fronts are locking up. And in general, just when you're threshold braking, you're usually going to trigger 1 or 2 of the yellow lights, and that's okay. You can have your rear dance around a little bit, as long as your fronts aren't locking up. It's your fronts that you don't want to lock up. As long as they're not locked up, you know, you're gonna have full control of the car, and you'll be okay. But yeah, so just notice here, you know, how slippery it is. And then pretty much once you reach this curbing here, that's when you want to start your turn in. It does look like a very, you know, long turn, so you may want to keep going a little further to late apex this. But the thing is, if you want, as we turn into here, you're going to see it's completely unnecessary. You're still going to late apex the turn, but you want to start turning it now. It's going to look like you're early apexing, but you're not. So right here, you start your turn in, but again, just keep it a little bit wide, just so that you want to apex right about here. That's your apex. And this is when you start to get on the gas. So you're still late apexing, but your turn in is early. Now, pretty much right about here, you get on the gas. Ideally, I probably would have liked to have the car turned a little bit more. So like I said, right over here, as you're coming into here, just stay a little bit wider than I was and then turn the wheel a little more, and you'll be angled a little bit better so that you can get on full throttle a little bit quicker. I wasn't turning as much, so I'm not full throttle. But you definitely want to get on the gas the moment you hit this apex, and then just increase the throttle as quickly to full throttle as soon as you can. And now this looks like a left-hander and right-hander. You should be able to completely straight line these. Alright, so we straight line these, and now as we come out here, you just make a nice smooth arc for those two turns. Now there's two ways to take this. What I did here is I then came out to the middle of the road, and then I waited, and then I turned in left, and I'm right along this side of the track. The other way to take this is when you're coming in here, instead you, at this point, straight line it towards the other corner. However, if you do that, just beware that this is going to be such a tight turn here. You don't do that. What you do is you instead let yourself track out to the middle of the road and then come back in. Because if you turn the wheel a lot to make this tight corner, you're just going to scrub off speed and scrub your front tires unnecessarily. So it really doesn't matter which way you do it. If you do it the way I've done it here and stay in the middle of the road, you've just increased your distance between those two corners versus straight lining them. And so if you do straight line them and then come out here a little wide before you come back over to the left, that's where you increased your track length. So you're full throttle the whole way either way, so it really doesn't matter. Whatever you're more comfortable with. If you want to really be set up for this turn, this braking zone coming up, then do it the way I did it. Stay in the middle of the road, and so you can turn in and immediately be on the left side. But like I said, even if you track out, you have plenty of time to come back over to the left. Alright, so we're coming to a braking zone here. Here you're braking a little bit after the 4. It looks like I reached peak brake pressure at the 3. But again, whatever you feel comfortable with. I do brake, I think, a little hard on this track in general for some reason. But it is bumpy, so whatever you feel comfortable with here is key. Bring it all the way down. I usually bring it down into first gear. My turn in is pretty much right after this cone, and I bring it down to first just to help slow the car down. You can do second also, but it is again very bumpy here, so you don't want to risk locking up the fronts. So in general, I will drop it down a few more gears just to make sure that I have some braking in the rear from the engine. Now getting back on the throttle here, you want to get on like pretty much right before you hit this apex. So you see right here, I'm already picking up the throttle. You need to be very careful here. It is very easy to spin right into the inside wall. You're very traction limited here. So what I normally do is, as you can see, I already shifted into second. So I use first to slow down the car, but then I get on the throttle and quick short shift into second, just to not risk getting too hard on the gas and spinning into the inside wall. Just make sure you don't track out all the way. See, I came out, about like 2/3 to the left, because you do have a left coming up, but this RSR has plenty of downforce, and this is good enough. Then it's just a nice smooth arc, full throttle. Now coming into here again, there's two ways to take this turn. You can either keep the wheel turned to the left a little bit, and you have a right-hander coming up, so you can stay to the left here, miss this apex here so that you are straight on the left for your braking zone, or you can do what I'm doing here, which is I shorten the track instead, and I basically straight line this apex here to where I'm going to end up braking and turning in. So as you can see here, those are your cones, your 3, 2, 1. Those are your brake markers. So as you can see here, I could have stayed wide here, and my turn in would have been much later and to the left of the road, so that by the time I reach that 3 cone, I'm already on the left side of the road. I don't think that's necessarily necessary, simply because doing it this way, I am still full throttle, and I'm full throttle longer because I don't have any kind of steering input that I need to put into the car, and I'm shortening the track by cutting this tight. And then right here, as you can see, I straighten out the steering, and regardless of whether you're coming from that corner over there or you're already all the way on the left side of the road, your braking marker is about those 3 cones right there, which are what I'm to the right of right now. But I'm braking in a straight line, so I can apply full brake pressure, no problem. And I'd also want to point out that this is actually, in some ways, beneficial. This is more of an advanced technique, I think. A lot of the times, what you want to do when going into corners, especially in big braking zones, is you actually turn the opposite direction of the corner slightly as you're braking before you turn in. Now, the reason for this is the fact that cars have the most grip when you've taken all the slop out of the suspension. So as you know, when you first are turning the car, your springs compress, your tire walls shift. There's a lot of slop in the suspension that gets taken out. But once you have all the load on that side, that's when you have your maximum amount of grip. And then as you're turning, the car stays loaded up. And that's when you have your full grip. So what happens is, as you can see here, because I'm actually pointed to the left, the opposite of the corner, I'm starting my turn in now. I already have the steering wheel turned to the right, loading up the left side slightly, taking out a lot of that slop, but I'm actually pointed straight right now. Because I was pointed to the left before. So by having the car point in the opposite direction, and another thing is the fact that you never want to have quick steering inputs. All your steering inputs should be smooth. You want to slowly turn into the apex. You never want it to be quick. And so by having the car pointing the other direction, you're starting your turn of the steering technically earlier because of the angle you're at. So you, number one, get to turn more slowly, and number two, load up the suspension and take out all the slop, so you have a lot of grip for the turn. I'm not saying that you have to do this. Like I said, I do feel it's like an advanced technique. But that's another reason why I think in this turn, straight lining this from this apex, it just works. You shorten the track, and then you really set yourself up for this corner nicely. So regardless of whether you're coming in from where I am or if you're all the way on the left here, like I said, your brake marker is a 3. Your turn-in point is pretty much this black box that we're coming into right here. Once you're out of this, that's pretty much your turn-in point. Otherwise, this corner is pretty straightforward. Just make sure you late apex this. You don't want to early apex this, otherwise you're going to end up wide here because the track's fairly tight over here and there's dirt out there that you really don't want to hit. So just track out here, and make sure you come over to the left immediately because you have a left-hander coming up here. Pretty much once you pass this this curbing here, that's when you want to start your turn in. You don't need to turn in too much. You want to stay full throttle, and you want to pretty much get a degree of steering input here that you can keep. This is pretty much two corners that you're trying to turn into one big arc. And you can cut these corners a lot. So now when we pass that curve, we turn in, we can cut this one, and then we cut this one. And you can even cut this corner more than I did. You can have your left side tires straddling. You could basically straddle the curbing here as you're coming over. Let me just switch to cockpit view. I'm sorry, chase view. So, you know, you could have your car even further over to the left, and you're not going to get off track. You won't get a slow down or anything. But what's most important is the fact that by the time you come off this curbing, you are in line on the left here, because you do not want to be in the middle of the track trying to come back over to the left here because you have a right-hander coming up. It is very bumpy over here, and you're only just gonna end up going wide on the right-hand side. So make sure you're on the left here. Pretty much once you reach these threes, that's when you want to start braking. Slow the car down, and then once you pass the two, that's kind of when you want to start your turn in. Trail it down in third gear. It really depends on what car you're in. So for example, like the Cup car, I will straddle this curbing, kind of like what I did here. I'm like right on the edge, but you notice that the car was bouncing around a lot. Right here, my right tire is almost on the concrete there. This car doesn't like it too much. You probably would have actually wanted to stay a little to the left, more so than I did. But for example, the Cup car, I completely straddle the curb. The Cup car takes it well. The problem with the RSR is that as you come back off the curb here, it bounces around a lot. So you just really want to be careful with that. And then as we come off it, you pretty much want to go full throttle. So right here, once the car stops bouncing, I go full throttle. And you stay full throttle all the way through the left-hander right here. You want to get up on this curb, and then pretty much as you're coming off of it, that's when you want to get off the gas and get onto the brakes here. What you kind of want to basically do now is just stay to the right side, to the left side of this line that's on your right here. But as like I said, you immediately start braking, and pretty much as you start braking, that's also when you start your turn in here. This is it's a tricky line to get. I honestly even sometimes will go a little wide here or something. I feel like it's a little deceptive. You want to come over to the left here to open up this right-hander, but it's hard to see the curb here as you're coming into it, and you really can't see the apex. So you just kind of have to have a little faith here that you basically come off that curb, start braking, and then start your turn in with not too much steering angle here. And then you come in here, you want to make sure you get a nice good late apex here. This again is kind of like that other curbing that I said that I took a little too much. I kind of did again here. Let's back it up here. So again, I straddled this curve a little bit. I had my right side tires in the concrete here. It's completely fine. You're not going to get a slowdown. And I honestly do it a lot, but you need to make sure then you have a lot of good car control, because the RSR is going to bounce around on you. You could just turn in a little bit later and just go along the curbing here. But again, if you look, this is pretty much where your apex is, right around here. That's your apex. So just make sure you definitely don't come in too early on here. And then As we track out here, you want to use all this curb on the left side. So you should be able to go full throttle definitely by the time you reach this. Just be careful again, you know, when you're coming off that curb. So slippery. Again, this track is just super bumpy, so it's just really, really slippery everywhere. All right, track out completely. So make sure you come back on here as you know, before you hit the grass there. This is a big passing zone, so getting that corner right is just super, super, super important. Now we are coming into Sunset, which is the last turn of this track. Honestly, there are a ton of lines through here, and I think I've even heard it been called the corner with a million lines or something like that. So I'm going to show you what I feel comfortable with. I feel like it's the least risky because you do the majority of your braking in a straight line. What some people will do is trail a decent amount of brake throughout the whole thing, and as we know how bumpy Sebring is, I just think that's way too risky. I'd rather do most of my braking in a straight line and have very minimal braking while I'm turning. So what I do is by the time I hit the three cone right here, I start my turn in and I kind of angle myself right for the corner of this wall here, and once I feel the car is fairly straight, that's when I get on the brakes hard. So when I first turn in here, I'm full throttle, full throttle, full throttle. I'm not braking until I feel the car is pretty straight. And then I get on the brakes fairly hard, and then the moment I start turning again, I come off the brakes. You see this white line right here? I pretty much just stay to the right of that. And as I'm turning in here, I'm coming off the brakes, I'm trailing it in. I overslowed a little bit on this corner, but I actually think that's actually a good way to be safe. If you slow down a lot, you can get on the gas really early. If I was still going a little slower here, I would have been trailing. I mean, if I still was carrying some speed, I would have been slowing down a little bit more, trailing the brake in, and probably getting on the gas more around here. Again, though, as you can see, I'm still not even full throttle. It is very, very, very bumpy. Right around here, in like the middle of this wall over here, there's a really big bump on the inside. The further out you stay here, the less and less it gets. So I don't like to stay really, really tight here. But some people do. Some people coming, you know, out of that last back straight will just stay completely tight along the wall. Some people will, instead of turning in at the 3 cones like I did, will wait till the 2 and then keep a decent amount of brake in just this one gigantic arc. You know, there are so many lines through here. I think the most important thing, because it is just you have so much road. The road is so wide everywhere, that you basically just have a 180-degree turn that you just want to carry as much speed as you possibly can. You can make I've done it before. You can make a really, really big arc here, be way further to the left I am here, but you can get on full throttle so much sooner than people who are staying tight here like this, that by the time all of you are, you know, around here, you've caught up with each other and you're going the exact same speed. So there are so many lines. Just do what you feel comfortable with. I take it that way just because I feel like I get majority of my braking done in a straight line, and the car feels fairly planted for me. But like I said, you're coming out of here. You just gonna have to play with the throttle based on, you know, how you're feeling and all the bumps and everything. Go full throttle as soon as you can. Track all the way out. And now you're back onto the front straight, and like I said, immediately start coming back over over to the right because you have, you know, your turn one left-hander coming up. Sebring is a really fun track. I think, again, it's hard to be consistent and is very tricky just because it's an old airport of concrete instead of a nice new asphalt track. But I think if you just, learn where all those bumps are, where the high curbs are, and just try to be careful around them, careful on the throttle, careful on the brakes, I think you can, pull some really good lap times here. Yeah, so that was track walk at Sebring International Raceway in the Porsche 911 RSR, and good luck this week, guys.